I wasn't supposed to be home that weekend. The only reason I was is because the conference hotel lost power. Whole building plunged into darkness mid-presentation. I caught the last red eye out, not even telling Lana. I thought I'd surprise her. Maybe bring home sushi. It had been a hard year. Instead, I walked into a house filled with soft music and laughter that didn't belong to me. My name is Chris. I'm 39. Crisis Logistics Manager for National Events, the guy who swoops in when things go sideways. And this? This was sideways in a way I never saw coming. Lana and I met in our late 20s. I was elbows deep in solving backstage fires at an expo center, and she was doing a couple's shoot in the atrium with that signature short hair and oversized film camera strapped around her neck. She smelled like eucalyptus and darkroom chemicals. Her studio was her sanctuary, always full of linen curtains and jazz. She had this way of looking at people like she could see the moment before they broke. She used to say I calmed her chaos. I used to think she was my wild star. But stars burn out. The first hint came weeks earlier, from our bank. Duplicate charges, one for our mortgage. The other? An Airbnb in downtown Portland. Midweek bookings under the name M. Tyler. It didn't make sense. Lana was organized, careful. But when I brought it up, she brushed it off. Clients. Sometimes I book space for shoots, babe. You know that. Still, something itched in my brain. And when she started humming around the house again, distracted, giddy, I installed a back patio camera. Not hidden. Just, quiet. The night I returned early, I never made it to the front door. I heard laughter. So I went around back. There she was. Barefoot in fairy lights. Wine in one hand. Camera in the other. Spinning in slow circles as a man I didn't recognize played an old jazz record on our patio speakers. And then he kissed her neck. Like he owned it. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. He wore a hoodie I knew too well. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. It was our son's. And my real hell had just begun. I didn't confront her that night. I stood in the dark like a ghost on my own lawn, watching her dance with someone else under patio lights we strung up together one summer when we still believed in things like permanence. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Everything in me went quiet, like my body knew it couldn't afford to feel it all at once. I backed away before they saw me. Drove around for hours. Slept in the parking lot of a Denny's with the seat reclined and my coat over my face, pretending it was a dream. It wasn't. When I finally came home the next morning, the music was off. She was alone, sipping coffee, barefoot again but in her usual robe, like nothing happened. I opened the fridge and said nothing. She hummed while making toast. My eyes drifted to the laundry basket in the corner. The hoodie, our son's, was neatly folded on top. She didn't mention my early return. I didn't mention what I saw. Because part of me still wanted to believe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was some bizarre creative shoot. Maybe I imagined the kiss. Maybe the hoodie was hers all along, and I just never noticed. Maybe, I clung to 100 maybes, each one weaker than the last. That's what denial feels like. Not blindness. But choice. An active war between logic and hope. The next week, I studied her the way she once studied her photo subjects, subtle movements, eye shifts, the silences between sentences. She started doing her hair differently. Brushed out and soft instead of tied back. She wore perfume again. Citrus and white musk. I hadn't smelled it since our honeymoon. She called me love more often. Little kisses on my cheek, the way she used to when we first dated. But now it felt like smoke, something meant to cloud. I checked her calendar. She had studio sessions booked 3 times that week. I asked her how they went. She answered too quickly, with too many words. I nodded, smiled, kissed her temple. Inside, I was unraveling. I kept looking for proof I was wrong. That it was all in my head. But every smile she forced felt thinner. Every day she was running errands, without a camera bag felt colder. I started having dreams, twisted loops of her dancing with that man under those lights while I stood frozen, watching through a window I couldn't break. Sometimes our son was there, too. Watching with me. That image, him, 10 years old, watching his mother belong to someone else, haunted me even in the daytime. So I pulled back. Became quieter. Numb. Work noticed. My team lead asked if I was sick. I said I was just tired. Lana offered to make my favorite stew one night, just because. I couldn't eat it. I kept thinking about whose hands had been on hers. And still, I told myself, maybe I was wrong. Until the security cam caught them again. Same night of the week. Thursday. This time, they didn't dance. They just sat in the hammock, our hammock, talking like lovers who didn't need to hide. She leaned into him. He pulled a strand of her hair into a curl, let it bounce. She giggled. She never giggled with me anymore. I paused the footage. Zoomed in. He was barefoot. Wearing jeans. One hand on her knee. The wine bottle was the same one we drank on our 10th anniversary. That was the moment something cracked inside me. I still hadn't cried. I hadn't screamed. But for the first time, I whispered out loud in that dark room, "Why, Lana?" And the only answer was the sound of her laughter, recorded, remote, echoing like a ghost I couldn't bury. It wasn't enough to see them. I needed to know. Because a part of me still clung to a threadbare possibility, maybe it wasn't a full affair. Maybe he was just some muse. A model. A fantasy that stopped short of sin. But then I found her planner. Lana's planner was sacred. She didn't trust digital. Every week was mapped in looping black ink, stickers, and film smudges. She left it in the studio by accident one night when she fell asleep editing in the living room. I sat on the rug beside her and flipped to the week I'd just lived through. Wednesday, rehearsal space. 3 to 6 p.m., M. Thursday, wine. Patio. Blue blanket, M. Saturday, edit plus return lens. He'll be gone. She wrote it like choreography. Like a love letter hidden in code. Not to me. To him. I flipped back further. More entries, try new shoot at Airbnb, B-roll, candles/lights/him. Sometimes just a heart. Or a name, M. Tyler. The man had a name. Not a fling. Not an accident. A regular, scheduled character in my wife's week. I started pulling threads. Her business Instagram had new reels, always in dreamy lighting. Once, I froze a frame, just for a second, her reflection in a window behind a couple she was supposedly shooting. Her smile too big. The man holding her camera, definitely not a client. I screenshot it. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I opened her laptop. She always left it open, assuming I wouldn't look. Maybe she was right before. But not now. A folder on her desktop, M_archive. My breath stopped. Inside, dozens of photos. Not just of him. Of them. Their hands laced together over a table. Her bare shoulder resting on his chest. Feet tangled under fairy lights. One of them asleep on our hammock, his mouth buried in her hair. I couldn't breathe. One video clip started with her whispering, "Stop, you're going to make me fall in love with you all over again," followed by his laugh, deep, relaxed, like this was their home. I slammed the lid shut. Sat on the couch shaking. Our son's game was the next day. I took him myself. Lana said she had a client at it due. She kissed us both goodbye and smiled like she wasn't two people. At the field, I watched my boy score his first goal of the season. He ran up the sidelines, breathless and red-cheeked, yelling, "Did you see that, Dad?" I cheered and clapped. But all I could think about was the man who wore his hoodie. The man my wife loved in secret. The man she invited into our world with soft blankets and borrowed smiles. And the proof that she never meant to stop. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was holding the evidence. And the denial was over. There's a silence you learn to carry when you're pretending not to know. It's not a peaceful quiet, it's sharp, like the air before a thunderstorm. That Friday evening, Lana had another late session. She told me not to wait up. I said I had calls to finish anyway. Her keys jingled, her camera bag over her shoulder, lips glossy like she cared again. I watched her back as she walked to the car. Light caught her necklace. It wasn't the one I bought her last Christmas. It was a tiny gold disc, the kind you engrave with initials. After she left, I grabbed the keys to the old truck she didn't know still had GPS sync. A relic from when I worked remote emergency sites. I pulled up her destination from the last few weeks. The same neighborhood. Same building. Every time she shot at a client's loft. I drove there. Parked 2 blocks away. Waited. The lights in apartment 3B flicked on at 6:42 p.m. A shadow moved inside. Then another. Her. Around 7:15, the curtains parted. Just enough. She was barefoot again. She always used to complain about cold floors, but now she stood with her toes on hardwood like it was sacred ground. She was laughing. Her shoulders were down. Relaxed. Her hair was loose, long waves spilling past the collarbone I used to kiss goodnight. He walked up behind her. I couldn't see his face clearly, just enough to know he wasn't me. He wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned into him like gravity didn't exist. He pressed his lips to her neck. Her head tilted. A hand slid into his hair. Her eyes fluttered shut like she was home. I couldn't breathe. They moved together like they'd done this 100 times. Familiar. Rehearsed. Slow. Not lust. Intimacy. They didn't talk much. When they did, it was low. Soft. She whispered something and he laughed, light, full. The way I hadn't heard her laugh with me since before our son was born. And then they danced. No music that I could hear. Just bodies moving gently, slowly, like they had all the time in the world. He kissed her forehead. She held on to the back of his neck. Her hands slipped under his shirt. The moment stretched, thick with tenderness that once belonged to me. I looked away. And saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. Eyes hollow. Mouth tight. I didn't cry. I drove home in silence, fingers white-knuckled on the wheel. Every red light stretched like a punishment. Every memory of our life together suddenly poisoned by that one moment. When I got home, our son was still up, building Lego towers on the living room rug. "Hey Dad," he said, not looking up. "Can Mom help me with this one tomorrow?" I couldn't answer. Just knelt beside him, helped him click the red piece into place. Behind us, the family portrait we took last fall still hung crooked. Her idea. She said it made us look real. Now I couldn't look at it. Because I knew. I had seen the truth in soft touches and unspoken words. And it hurt more than if I'd caught them undressed. Because what they had wasn't just a secret. It was sacred. And I was the outsider now. The following morning, I woke up in our bed alone. The sheets were still warm on her side, but the room already felt empty. I went through the motions, made coffee, packed our son's lunch, ironed my shirt for work I wouldn't focus on. But something in me had shifted. Something final. The man I was before I saw her with him. He was gone. I dropped our son at school. He asked if Lana was picking him up that day. I lied. Told him she had an appointment. He nodded and pulled the door shut. Didn't see the way my hand shook on the wheel. That day, I called my brother. Told him I needed help with digital forensics. He'd done freelance tech work for years, always loved this kind of thing. I told him I needed to know everything. He didn't ask questions. Just said, send me her Instagram. Her Dropbox, if you can. I already had the passwords. She used the same 3 variations for everything: our anniversary, our son's birthday, and her old apartment number. I had them all. By that evening, he'd sent me screenshots. Metadata. Time-stamped files from photo sessions that didn't exist. Pictures of him, always him, hidden behind curated grids. One reel featured his silhouette against the window, cropped so closely you'd only know if you'd seen his face. I sat on the garage floor, staring at the files on my tablet. My hands were numb. The world didn't feel real. And then I heard it. My son's voice. Upstairs, on a video call with a friend. Laughing. Laughter in a house soaked in lies. I stood. Walked inside. And knew I had to do it. Not for revenge. But because staying silent was killing me. That night, Lana came home late. Hair tousled. Eyes bright. A half-full bottle of Riesling in a canvas tote. Long day, she sighed, setting down her bag. You okay? I didn't answer. She looked at me, searching my face. Chris. I pointed to the dining table. There, printed on matte paper, was one image. Her in his arms. The hammock. The wine. The hoodie. She froze. Her lips parted. No words came. I said nothing. Just stood there, still, waiting. Finally, she whispered, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed. Not out of humor. Out of disbelief. Pain. It never is, I said. She reached for the photo, but I placed my hand on it. Don't. Just, don't. Tears filled her eyes. Chris, I didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't you? Her silence told me everything. I was lonely, she said. You were gone all the time. You were tired. Distant. I needed to feel seen. You could have told me. I didn't want to break you. I looked her in the eyes. You did anyway. I left the room. She didn't follow. And I realized, she never really had. Revenge wasn't rage. It was peace. We didn't go to a hotel. I took our son to my brother's for the weekend. Let him play Minecraft, eat cereal, sleep in late. He was quiet, but he smiled. That was all I needed. Monday morning, the fallout began. The emails were sent. The image. The sentence. The postscript. By lunch, I started getting messages. Her mother texted me first, "I'm so sorry. We had no idea." Her best friend sent a single line, "That hoodie detail shattered me." Her business partner asked for a meeting. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I watched her Instagram unravel. The perfect couple posts, archived. Her studio account, put on private. Clients pulling tags. One even reshared the hammock photo, adding, "Not the artist I thought she was." The damage wasn't public. But it was precise. She called me twice. Left voicemails I didn't listen to. Then emailed. "Please, let me explain. We were falling apart before this." I didn't answer. Because I knew the difference between a crack and an earthquake. We had cracks. She made it a collapse. And the final blow? I filed for custody. Full. With documentation. Emotional betrayal. Exposure to an inappropriate relationship. Influence on a minor. The judge reviewed the metadata. The school counselor gave a report. Our son's silence in therapy was cited. And when it came time for Lana to speak, she broke down in front of the court. She apologized. She wept. She swore it was a moment of weakness. But it wasn't a moment. It was months. The judge awarded me primary custody. She'd have supervised visits. Holidays, if our son agreed. He didn't. That night, he asked if we could take down the photo wall. The one with her studio shots. I helped him. We replaced them with his drawings. A watercolor of our dog. A sketch of space. A crayon rocket that said, Dad and me. I got a small apartment 2 neighborhoods over. Clean. Bright. No ghosts. I started running again. Cooking again. Laughing again. One Saturday, I took him to the same park Lana and I used to go to when we were dating. He climbed the old jungle gym. I sat on the bench with a thermos of coffee. A woman nearby watched her daughter swing and smiled at me. Yours? She asked. I nodded. The one in the NASA shirt. She smiled. He looks happy. He is, I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. Because my revenge wasn't in what I destroyed. It was in what I protected. Myself. And him.